Hey everybody, what's going on? My name is Andrew Michael, and if you're watching this video, you're probably considering a move to St. Johns County, Florida. And you're asking yourself, well, what will it cost if I move there? What are the different, what's the cost of living there? And so if you watch this video, by the end of it, you're gonna have a pretty good idea. And we're gonna talk about 5 things. And not only are we gonna talk about 5 things, I'm gonna show you some solid ways to save some money. So we're going to talk about property taxes. We're going to talk about cost of water. And no, we're not talking about the water you buy at the grocery store. We're talking about the water you get for irrigating your lawn, that sort of thing. We're going to talk about insurance. We are going to talk about how there's little public transportation here, and so some ways that you can save some money with that. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about CDD fees, or community development districts, and homeowners association fees. So there you go. We're going to chat about all those things, and we're going to do it right now. There you go. All right, welcome back. Again, my name is Andrew Michael, and every day we help families just like yours with making a smooth transition to Northeast Florida. So whether you're looking to move immediately or whether you're looking out in the future, we would love the chance to chat with you. You can give us a call, shoot us a text, whatever works best for you. And so with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into it. So number 1, we are going to talk about property taxes. Now, no matter where in the world you're coming to us from, you're probably paying property taxes on your home unless you have like 100% connected veteran or something like that. But 100% service-connected disability veteran, excuse me. With very rare exceptions, most of us pay property taxes. And so whether our taxes here are high or low compared to where you're coming from, I can't answer. You would know that. But what I can show you is a few ways to save some money on it. So number 1, you're going to want to file for homestead exemption. And this is right away. Now this only works for homes that are your primary residence. And again, we're talking about the state of Florida. So you definitely want to file for it. Now I can't talk about the legal protections that you get because I'm not an attorney. But what I can tell you is that it does 2 things. Number 1, it caps your market value of your home. So the assessed value of your home is what they base their taxing value on, and it can only increase by 3% per year. So if real estate goes gangbusters, which this is Florida, it happens, they can't keep grossly adding to your property tax bill. They can only increase the assessed value of your home by 3% per year. That is the absolute max, and that is of course the value that they tax it on, not the market value. So we're going to get in the weeds on that in a little bit. So the first thing you need to do once you get your recorded deed and all your stuff from your transaction is you need to file for homestead exemption. In fact, if you buy your house with us, I'm going to follow up with you January of the next year to make sure that you've done it and to get you the information you need so you can. Now don't wait till January. We could talk about something else if that's the case, but definitely get on that and get it done, because everybody says they'll do it later and then life happens and things happen and you forget. And then you don't have that cap on the assessed value of your home, and then voila, your property taxes go way up. So you definitely don't want that to happen. So anyway, so the first thing you need to do is file for homestead exemption. Now, after that, there's a few things that you need to know. Number 1, what is the tax difference between living in an incorporated area versus an unincorporated? And what does that even mean? Well, in St. Johns County, we really only have 2 cities. We have the city of St. Augustine, and we have the city of St. Augustine Beach. We used to have a city called Hastings, but they actually rolled into the county, meaning became unincorporated a few years ago. So those are the only 2 cities that we have. And let me show you the price difference between purchasing a home in a incorporated area versus a non-incorporated. Let's take a look. All right, so here we go. So I'm going to look at a home that has a market value as determined by the property appraiser at $500,000. If you are in the city of St. Augustine, you are going to pay $9,488 for your property taxes. And again, we're not talking about homestead exemption. We're not talking about anything else, anything like that. That is just the assessed value. So there you go. So $9,000. But let's say you bought a home also worth $500,000. And not in an incorporated area. So let's see here, let's find one. Here we go. I'm trying to find one that's not in the CDD, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so here we go. So your property tax bill just dropped from what we just said to $6,428. And it's the exact same house. It's just a few miles north on US 1 is really the only difference. Now, the question you're probably asking yourself, and that I get a lot, is, okay, great, if I live in an unincorporated district, am I still gonna get fire rescue? Does that mean I'm living way out in the boonies or out in the sticks or something? And the answer is yes, you'll still get fire rescue. The only difference will be, like, let's say you live in the city of St. Augustine and something terrible happens, you call 911. Well, then it'll be city police officers or city fire rescue that come to you. On the flip side, if you live in the unincorporated district, well, then you'd have county sheriff that come to you or county fire rescue. Still, there's a few exceptions to that. Sometimes they'll have mutual aid agreements, but we're not going to get into all that stuff. But long story short, just know this: no matter whether you live in incorporated or unincorporated, you're still going to get access to first responders and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind. Next thing is that there are discounts for different categories. Now, this changes a lot, and there's lots of different groups out there that get it. So if you're 100% service-connected military veteran, and first of all, thank you for your service, but then yes, you do get your property taxes. In fact, depending on your disability rating, you can have no property taxes. You also have seniors get some discounts. Sometimes first responders get them. I actually found out when I was getting ready for this video that all service-connected disability veterans get at least a discount. So I have a 10% service-connected disability, and when I didn't know that this was even a thing, but now when I get done with this video, I'm gonna go file for a reduction in my property taxes. Now, how does that work? For the sake of just keeping the math even, let's say they assessed the taxable value of my home was $300,000. Well, okay, so then I'm gonna take that $5,000 credit, and now the taxable amount on my home is $295,000, not $300,000. So they're not dropping my property taxes $5,000 because I don't even pay $5,000 in property taxes. What they're going to do is reduce the amount that they're assessing by that $5,000. So hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, or you have any comments, throw them down below, and I'll do my best to respond as fast as I can. And one of the last things that I think Florida is one of the only states to have, and if I'm wrong on this and your state has it too, throw a comment down below. I'd love to hear it. But portability, how does that work? Well, let me show you a screenshot here of a home in our area. So this is just a random property that I found. You don't have the address on here. So they're saying that the market value for this home is $537,000. So I'm rounding there, obviously. All right, and the total deferred is $250,229. That is the portability amount. So if this person sells this house, and let's say they buy a house that is assessed at $600,000, they would then reduce the assessed value by that $250,000. And remember, once you file for homestead exemption for that, it gets capped and it can only go up 3% per year. So that is, now you can take that anywhere in the state of Florida. It doesn't matter where you're coming from, as long as it's within the state. You also have to, the real estate transactions have to be within 3 years. Now, if you're getting ready to sell or you're getting ready to make a move, I would make sure, you don't have to buy right away, but laws change, things change. So definitely research it on your own. But yes, when I called the St. Johns County Property Appraiser's office this morning and I got all the facts from them, and I already knew most of the stuff, but I just wanted to just kind of dot my I's and cross my T's, that's what they told me. So definitely something to check out there. The other thing that you may want to consider, here's a pro tip. Let's say you're getting ready to sell your house in the state of Florida and move. Well, let's say usually the market value as determined by the property appraisers is usually kind of low in my experience as a real estate agent. And it's not their fault. They're not involved in selling real estate. Most of the time they do this stuff remotely, meaning they've never been inside these homes, so they don't know certain things. So you can actually contact them and meet with one of their appraisers. I believe they come to your home if I'm not mistaken, but you can give them evidence to show that this value is too low. Now, normally you wouldn't necessarily want to do that because it might affect the value on your property taxes. However, if you want to increase your portability that you're taking with you to the next home, so let's say, for instance, with this home here, if we were getting ready to put it on the market and we believed it was worth $600,000, well, then I could put together some recent sales in the neighborhood or in the area to justify that argument. We could take it to the tax appraiser or one of the appraisers that work at the office, and they'll look at it, and if they agree with us, then they will adjust that market value, which means there'll be a bigger portability amount that this person would roll into their next home. So that right there is a great way to save some money. So that is property taxes. Let's move on to water. Now, so there you go. So I get questions all the time asking if we have liquid gold that comes out of our sprinklers here in St. Johns County. And the reason for it is the water is expensive. So I don't want to give an exact quote because the prices range, it may vary or whatnot. But there's a couple ways that you could look to reduce it. Number one, if you live in a more rural property that has a well for everything, well then, of course, you're not going to pay the county for water because you're generating your own water. But remember, wells have expenses too that you have to maintain them, this, that, and the other thing. So that's something to consider. The other is, even if you live in a neighborhood that has county water, let's say, or county, or if you're in a city water or whatnot, you may still be able to get a well for irrigation. So what does that mean? You have a well at your house. It's not for drinking water, like I guess you could drink it, but it's not for the water in your home, that you cook, bathe with, all that kind of stuff. It's only for, when you hook up a hose to the well, or more likely when you use irrigation. So that is something that you can get. If you put in a well, it's an investment up front, but for as long as that well works, you don't have to pay for the water that you're using to water your lawn, which in the summertime here, you're gonna water your lawn like 2 to 3 times a week. So over time, that could definitely save you money. And there's all different kinds of wells. Sometimes you have shallow wells, and they may leave that rust mark on the side of your house or on your vehicles or something. So you definitely wanna be careful what kind of well you're putting in, and if it is a shallow well, you wanna make sure there's something in it to remove the rust, so you're not getting that ugly red mark on the side of your house. Second thing you may have is reclaimed water. Now here's how I get that question a lot. Some of your bigger communities especially have this, and when you look at the pipes for like the sprinklers or wherever the reclaimed water is going, it's purple. And people are asking, like, why are the pipes purple? Well, it's because it's reclaimed water. And so they want to make sure that now I don't know who drinks out of sprinklers, but they want to make sure that everybody knows that, hey, the water coming from here is not safe to drink. It's reclaimed. And so that water is cheaper than the water that goes into your house. So there you go. So those are some pro tips right there. Now, you can't get reclaimed water unless your home is set up for it by the developer and the builder and stuff like that. So next thing we're going to talk about is insurance. Insurance. Now, this is a big one in the state of Florida. So for years, we had people called storm chasers. What's what we call them. They're roofers who basically, if there's a storm in the area, these guys would canvass a neighborhood, bang on everybody's doors, and convince them that if they sign a dotted line, they get a free roof. And there was all kinds of fraud that came out of it. And I'm not saying they're all illegitimate. That's not a call for me to make, but I can tell you that they did cause a lot of problems within the insurance industry. So now insurance is a big thing here, and you could be surprised what your homeowner's insurance may cost, where before it was never a problem, but they got tired of either paying attorneys to fight claims or paying for new roofs for everybody. So obviously now the rates went up, and they're way stricter on who they will write insurance for, meaning the type of homes. So a couple of things. Number one, when you're comparing insurance, make sure you ask for the declarations page. And here's why that's important. Let's say you call one insurance company, like, oh yeah, we'll give you homeowners insurance for $2,000. And the next company's like, $2,000, we'll give it to you for $1,000. Great. Well, is the coverage apples to apples? So ask for a printout where you can sit there and look at them side by side and see what your coverages are. And then make sure that those coverages are adequate. You don't want to be underinsured, but then again, you don't want to be overinsured either. So that's one thing. Next, check on bundling. Now, everybody knows this. So if you're moving to Florida, you're probably you are going to have to change, most likely going to have to change your auto insurance. You're going to have to, whatnot. So go ahead and talk to that insurance agent and say, okay, homeowner's insurance is going to cost me X, but if I get my auto insurance with you, if I insure my business with you, if I get whatever personal insurance I carry, that kind of thing, if I do all of that with you, do I get a discount on any of it? Now, that's common sense. Most people know to ask that, but I thought I'd throw it in here anyway. Now, another thing as it pertains to real estate, now let's talk first. There's two ways you can buy a home. One is new construction, the other one's a resale. So let's talk resale first. Typically, you're going to have an inspection period, and during that inspection period, you may be able to get out of the contract and get your binder deposit back at your sole discretion. It varies by area, it varies by contract, so you definitely want to know that before you sign it. But when you're looking at, when you're doing your due diligence or your inspection period, definitely bring the insurance agents into it at that point for two reasons. Number one, would you benefit from a 4-point inspection and or a wind mitigation inspection? If so, your home inspector could probably do that for you. It's similar to a home inspection, but it's typically done on a state-approved insurance form and asks specific questions that they need, or they don't need the whole home inspection. In fact, they don't want to see it. What they want is the 4-point or the wind mit, as we call them. So definitely ask an insurance agent or two when you first go under contract if you would benefit. Now they'll need to know the age of the home, how old's the roof, they'll need to know all that stuff, but your agent should be able to provide for you if you don't know it. And any other advantage to that is that's find out, so you can get all your inspections done at once. Number two, during the inspection period is probably the easiest time to get out of a real estate contract if you're under sale for a resale. And so that being the case, you want to find out what insurances are going to cost before you get too far down the rabbit hole there. So for instance, if the house is in a flood zone and you're required to get flood insurance by your lender, then you're definitely going to want to get a quote for that at this time. You're also going to want to see what homeowner's insurance is. And so recently I've had issues where the house had a brand new roof, but it had an old water heater, or stuff like that. And in which case we could navigate all of that because we were still in the inspection period. What some agents do, or what some buyers do, they wait till the very end to get the homeowner's insurance, which technically they're not required to do it until they're trying to get full loan approval. And at that point they find out, oh, you thought your homeowner's insurance was going to be $1,500. Well, guess what? It's actually going to be about $3,000, $4,000 because X, Y, and Z. So you definitely want to find that out early on. And it may be something that you can get a credit from the seller for, or they can repair themselves. That's a case-by-case basis, so I don't want to go too far into that. The other thing is if you're doing new construction, before you sign the contract, you might want to reach out to a local agent. And now you're probably not going to need the 4-point wind mit. You can do an inspection towards the end, but initially there may not be a house for them to inspect, so you can't do that stuff. But you can get a tentative insurance quote. So if you call, I'm going to use a random name, XYZ Insurance, and say, hey, we're buying this house at 123 Main Street. It's built by X builder. It's going to be X amount of heated square feet. In fact, here is the design off their website. They can give you a quote for homeowner's insurance based on that, and it'll be pretty accurate. So that's definitely something you can do if you're doing new construction. So number 4, next we're going to move off to how we have very little public transportation here. So if you're coming from like Washington, D.C., or you're coming from New York City or any of these big, Houston, I don't know, any of these big metropolitan areas, you probably have subways, you probably have trains, you may even have public buses to take you to and from. In Northeast Florida, we don't really have a lot of that. And I'm not saying we don't have any, we just don't have a lot of it. So I think most people would agree that public transportation, with very limited exceptions, is probably not going to be a thing in your day-to-day life. So with that being the case, if you have to commute to work, so let's say you work in Jacksonville, but you live in St. Johns County, you're going to want to find a home that's fairly close to I-95 or 295 or 9B or whatever the case may be. So that way you could jump on the highway and boom, you could be to work in a couple of minutes, or you could take the kids to school, or whatever your life looks like. You want to make sure that you're in close proximity to those things, because again, like when I go visit my friends in DC or I used to live in Manhattan, I don't take my car. I'm not driving in any of those places because there's no need for it. There's public transportation. Well, here there really isn't much. So I would assume that you're going to be driving just about everywhere, and so I would pick my area that I lived in accordingly to that. Now, last but not least, we have CDD fees and HOA fees. I'm not going to get into the weeds on what a CDD or Community Development District fee is. I actually did a separate video on that. So if you look down in the comments below, I'll post a link to it so you can watch that video and see exactly what a CDD or Community Development District fee is. But it definitely does affect what you have to pay when you move here. So if you're purchasing a home in, let's say, Palencia, Nocatee, there's too many of them for me to mention here now. But if you're in one of those CDD communities, I would definitely find out what that CDD is And keep in mind, it can go up. Many communities, in fact, it does. So just keep that in mind. Number one. And number two, look at it. What am I getting out of it? And what is my life going to look like when I move to Northeast Florida? Now, why do I mention that? When we moved here in 2014, at the time, we were newly married and didn't have kids. So when we looked at homes in Nocatee and a few other places with CDD fees, we said, no, that's okay. My wife works, I work. I don't have time for the 3-story zip lines and water slides and, gym and, whatever. Well, okay, but life changed. We now have kids. And so if we had that decision to make over again, we might make a different decision. And where I have this conversation a lot with buyers is we get a lot of people who are moving here to retire. Not everyone. We do work with a lot of people younger than that too. But we do work with a fair amount of newly retirees, people who are just retired. And when I have the conversation with them, like, oh yeah, we don't care about amenities because we don't have time for them. So, okay. And this is a question for you to answer, not me. But now that you will have time because you're retiring, are you going to want the pickleball courts? Do you want the gym? Do you want the big fancy pool with all the stuff? The tennis courts? Like the more clubs, like a social director who manages all these clubs, like for traveling and wine drinking, and you name it, if it's a special interest, there's a club in some of these communities that does it. So your life now may not have time for that, but when you come here and you retire, you might. Or if you're a newly married couple or you don't have kids yet and you're planning on having them, well, once you do, are you going to want those amenities in the neighborhood? And would you be willing to pay for them? That's a question for you to answer. If you have any questions about it, you can ask me and I can kind of be a sounding board. It doesn't matter to me whether you buy a home in a CDD community or not. But it's definitely, you can kick ideas off each other just so you can make a better decision for you and your family. I'm more than happy to do that. In fact, that's kind of one of the things that I do here. So that's definitely a fee, though, that you have to consider in your cost of living that you may or may not be paying. Another one is HOA fees. Almost every neighborhood's going to have homeowners association fees. Now, not if there's no HOA, obviously. But some of them, it's very basic. Like I've seen some HOAs that only charge $300 or $400 a year because the only thing that they're providing is a sign in the front of the neighborhood. They're going to, mow the grass in that common area. Maybe there's a playground, not very much. And so that's all they have, so that's all you get charged. On the other hand, you have some neighborhoods that may charge, let's say $800 to $1,000 a year, but you have a swimming pool, you have basketball courts, you have tennis courts, you have, all this other stuff. And again, it just comes down to a lifestyle question. Are you going to use these amenities? And if so, well then it would probably be a lot cheaper to pay a CDD fee or an HOA fee than it would be to buy those things in the outside world, if you could even find it. So it's really just a question for you. There's no right or wrong answer on that. But anyway, those are the top 5 things I think you need to know before you assess the cost of living in St. Johns County, Florida. Do me a favor, if you learned anything or if you found anything particularly useful, go ahead and throw it in the comments down below. I'd love to hear it. If you're looking to relocate to Northeast Florida and you'd like to make a smooth transition, we would love to chat with you. You can give me a call, shoot me a text, whatever works best for you, and we're definitely here to help you. On that note, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure, and I look forward to meeting you in person. Have a great day.